This one titled the New York State Economy in the 1980s, a program for economic growth. Kind of be interesting to see what they thought was going to happen in the 1980s, or what they were trying to push toward the 1990s. Obviously, this is written in the mid-1980s, and there's no mention of the internet, despite the fact that by the mid-1990s, people were getting on the internet left and right. Big concerns, because back in the late 70s, there was a big recession, and employment in New York State was down. Manufacturing jobs were lost. Got all sorts of charts to take a look at that. So what's the prescription? Well, typically, we're talking fiscal policy. We're talking about changes in the tax rate. We're talking about creation of tax credits for certain activities. So I looked here under alternative energy, and they got a blurb, it's about this big, on alternative energy, and they want to encourage establishing an 8% state tax credit for investment in alternative energy production facilities. But typically, governments use tax policy to impact change. Remember, rules, incentive, actions, outcomes. So if they establish rules, like say hiring a veteran as an example, that's going to create if they give a tax credit for that, that's going to create the incentive for a company to actually provide that action. So that's typically what happens. Now, when they talk about stimulus, well, I think the best example of classic example of an economic stimulus that's really better known as an economic boondoggle would be the infamous Bridge to Nowhere in Alaska. So let's talk about that.
Class, we're standing outside of the Ted Stevens house in Girdwood, Alaska. Ted Stevens is the former senator who was brought down in part by this house, where he illegally used construction workers to help pay for it. And of course, when you fly to Anchorage, you fly into the Ted Stevens International Airport. So this is a man who is infamous, Republican senator from Alaska, infamous for bringing home the bacon. He was the one who was in charge of who was pushing for the Bridge to Nowhere, that eventually Governor Palin had nixed that whole idea. It was a real big porculus kind of a guy. So we're glad he's no longer a public servant, because we just can't afford him. In Alaska, he may have been considered great for bringing home all that money, but I'm from New York, and I can't stand to see the waste up here in Alaska. He also helped the $30 million nanotechnology group up there in University of Alaska at Fairbanks, and after 9 years, they closed that program due to lack of funding. So they got $30 million that they pissed away, and now they got nothing to show for it, except this house.
See, now, most politicians will tell you that the logic for a big stimulus of any kind is the multiplier effect. When we give money to the construction crew goes out and buys lunch at McDonald's, and they have to rent hotels, and that stimulates the economy. And then the hotel owner and the McDonald's owner, they have money to go and buy new cars, and then the car dealer has money. So that's the multiplier effect. But there are a number of things that happen or don't happen because of it. If a construction crew is building a bridge to nowhere, then that means they're not available for the construction of someone's basement, and some private road, or whatever, somebody's swimming pool, whatever it is they're constructing. They don't have time for that because they're doing something else. It also means, in terms of the market financing, if governments are purchasing dollars, in other words, if they're getting loans from banks and so on, the banks may have less money available, will have less money available to loan to other endeavors, private endeavors. So there's what's called a crowding out effect. Anyway, the beauty of spending, most spending is really just redistributive spending, which means if I pay you to build a bridge to nowhere and no one absolutely uses it, then what's happening is I had money in my pocket that I could have spent on thousands of different things. Now you have money in your pocket to spend on thousands of different things. You haven't actually improved the economy just because the government is spending. Now, if the government does build a bridge to somewhere, and that allows the the fruit that was rotting on those trees to get harvested and driven over the bridge to the mainland, and they end up increasing the consumption and increasing the production of the nation, increasing the gross domestic product, well, then you've improved things. But if all you did is build a bridge to nowhere that no one uses, you haven't actually improved anything. Now, one of the other things in terms of redistribution is things like Medicaid and Medicare. I'm just speaking factually what they are. They allow, in the case of seniors, they may be on a prescription drug plan, as an example, and a medical plan. Well, what happens to the seniors? The seniors vote. So there's a good chance that if you've given them something, you're never going to be in position to take it away, because they're going to vote out of office anybody who even thinks about it. So how would you address people who are already receiving benefits?
No co-payments and no deductibles on screenings for seniors and annual health checkups. And what I'm most touched by is that the senior community, who have been told that it won't affect people until they're 55 crowd going older, they are concerned because they said, we saw what good it brought to us, the economic stability and vitality it delivered. We want it for our children, we want it for our grandchildren, and we're a smart society, and we can put formats together that will strengthen all of us. Yes.
I mentioned in this book here, most of the things are tax reductions. The only way you can have a reduction in taxes if you have a reduction in spending. And a reduction in spending means let's cut the waste.
Hello, Congressman.
Hello there.
So I heard your speech earlier, and you were talking a lot about how there's a lot of programs like sciences and things that we definitely need to continue. You don't want to cut. But you also explained that we have a deficit and that you need to cut some things out of the budget, and that you're going to be cutting waste and stuff like that. So my question is to you, so how do you determine what's waste, and then could you give an example of it?
Sure. Again, some of your defense spending that is going to pay for god-awful profit margins that ought to be reined in. The waste that is part of not bulk purchasing pharmaceuticals for federal produced programs. Outmoded elements in the education arena.
When it comes to taxes and government spending, there's no doubt that everybody has a different perspective on it. You know, the glass is half full, the glass is half empty. The real question should be, how full should the glass be? But instead, people worry. There are people who are receiving benefits who have a lot of concerns about losing those benefits. There are people who are paying the taxes, and they have a lot of concerns about how their tax dollars are being spent.
Under the Constitution, no, you can't! Say it so your congressman can hear. No, you can't! No, you can't! No, you can't! Join us and pick up a Constitution. Read it. Understand your rights, your liberties. Understand what the federal government can do, but more importantly, understand what the federal government cannot do. Because in the end, it is up to us, we the people, to enforce it. Thank you.